The fog rolled in from Bayou St. John like a slow, living thing, swallowing the lamps and the laughter of the city. Old fishermen on the docks would lower their eyes, pretending not to see the pale shapes drifting across the surface of the water. They whispered that the mist carried voices, those of the slaves who had drowned trying to escape centuries ago, their cries tangled with the croak of frogs. Some said if you listened too closely, you'd hear your own name called softly, like a promise or a warning. No one who answered ever came back. They told the story of the woman who wept on Rampart Street, dressed in a lace gown that glowed faintly in the dark. Her fiancé had been murdered on their wedding night, and since then, she wandered the streets calling his name. Tourists who followed her out of curiosity disappeared, leaving only the echo of their footsteps. Cab drivers refused to take fares past the church after midnight. And sometimes, just before dawn, the scent of roses filled the air, fresh, sharp, impossible. In the garden district stood a mansion surrounded by an iron fence carved into the shapes of coiling snakes. No one lived there for long. Tenants spoke of humming voices beneath the floorboards and shadows that whispered. A pianist once stayed there, saying he would compose a symphony inspired by the house. By morning, his hands were bleeding, every piano key marked with fingerprints. The sheet music he left behind had no notes, only lines of trembling script, "She made me play." The legend of the phantom jazzman haunted the corners of Bourbon Street. He had once been a trumpet player who sold his soul for the perfect song. Every note he played drew people closer, closer until they could no longer stop dancing. One night, he disappeared mid-performance, leaving behind only his golden trumpet. When storms raged, the sound of his music still floated through the thunder. They said he was trapped in the rhythm of eternity, playing for an audience of ghosts. At a small bar on Esplanade Avenue, the bartender closed every night at 3 a.m. sharp. "That's when the guests arrive," he would say. The guests were not the living, they were men and women from another century, dripping with river mud, eyes full of hollow light. They came for their old drinks, paying with coins no one had seen in 100 years. Once, when the bartender forgot to close the door, he found the place ransacked the next morning, the words, "Still thirsty," written in condensation across the shattered mirror. Deep in the swamp, an old witch had once lived, her cabin half sunk into the earth, surrounded by vines. People came to her for cures, blessings, and curses. She could call lightning with her breath, calm storms with her song. When developers tried to drain her land, she vanished into the mist. The machines sank days later, pulled down by roots that seemed alive. Travelers still see her light flickering in the bayou, like a lantern guiding the lost, or warning them away. The LaLaurie mansion stood proud and cursed, its history dripping with blood. Madame LaLaurie's cruelty was so great that even hell refused her. The walls still whispered with the pain of her victims. Tourists fainted from unseen hands brushing their shoulders. Guards swore they heard footsteps pacing upstairs when the doors were locked. Every now and then, a scream echoed from the attic, long and sharp as a blade through silence. Her spirit, they said, waited eternally for forgiveness that would never come. An artist in Jackson Square painted portraits that moved. The faces shifted when no one looked, eyes following you down the street. He claimed he painted only what he saw, and what he saw were the dead. Once, a woman accused him of painting her deceased husband. The artist didn't deny it. He wanted one last portrait, he said. When she brought it back, terrified, the canvas had turned blank, pure white, as if the spirit had finally gone. The river bride appeared on foggy nights, drifting above the Mississippi in her tattered wedding gown. Her song could lure sailors from their ships. Those who followed her drowned without a struggle, their faces calm, almost smiling. Some said she was a ghost waiting for her groom, others whispered she was death itself, cloaked in love. Every 7 years, she appeared at the docks, weeping, whispering the same words, "He promised he'd come home." There was once a clockmaker who lived on Chartres Street. His son, obsessed with time, tried to build a clock that could bring back the dead. One stormy night, lightning struck the shop. The boy was never found. But the clocks never stopped. They ticked together, beating like 1,000 hearts. At midnight, they chimed 13 times instead of 12. Then silence. Locals swore they could hear the faint sound of breathing inside, as though time itself was alive, and waiting. 30 Most trending. They say that in the old cemetery near Canal Street, one tomb is always warm to the touch, no matter how cold the night. It belongs to a man named Etienne Roussel, a gambler who supposedly cheated death itself. According to the story, he made a deal with the devil at a poker table one rain-soaked night, wagering his soul for a lifetime of luck. He won every game, every bet, until the day he died. But when they buried him, the ground refused to cool. Visitors claim to hear the sound of cards shuffling beneath the marble, and sometimes, a faint whisper, double or nothing. There's a little-known alley off Royal Street called Widow's Walk, where the air is colder than anywhere else in New Orleans. Locals say it's haunted by the spirits of women who waited for sailors who never returned. Their translucent forms drift at night, holding faded letters, their eyes full of eternal patience. The legend says if you walk there at midnight and whisper the name of someone you lost, the wind will carry a whisper back, an answer from the other side. Some say it's comforting. Others say it's a trap to lure you closer to the mist. The Cemetery Singer is another tale that chills even the bravest hearts. Gravediggers in St. Louis Cemetery claim to hear a soft voice humming hymns long after sunset. Once, a caretaker followed the sound and found a woman in a black veil standing beside a fresh grave. She smiled at him and vanished into thin air. The next morning, he discovered his own name carved into the tombstone she'd been visiting. After that night, he left the city for good. Yet the voice still rises with the night wind, pure and haunting, echoing through the marble aisles. At an abandoned plantation near the edge of the city, travelers talk about the burning man of Plaquemine Road. The story goes that a cruel overseer once trapped workers in the sugar house and set it ablaze to hide his crimes. But the fire took him too, and now, his ghost burns without end. Drivers passing by see a figure engulfed in flames standing in the fields, his mouth open in an endless scream. Those who stop to help never make it home. By morning, their cars are found empty, doors open, seats still warm. In the French market, vendors talk about a boy who sells flowers that never wilt. He appears at dawn, barefoot, smiling, his eyes distant and gray. No one knows where he comes from or where he goes. The strange part is that his flowers never die. Some say he's the spirit of a child lost during a yellow fever outbreak, condemned to relive his final morning forever. If you buy a flower from him and keep it, they say it brings luck, but if you let it wither, misfortune follows you until you return to the market and leave an offering where he stood. On stormy nights, the river itself seems to come alive. Boatmen whisper that beneath its surface lie ghost ships, sailing in silence, their decks crowded with lost souls. Some claim to have seen lanterns glowing beneath the waves, moving steadily against the current. When fog thickens, horns sometimes sound from nowhere, deep and mournful. A legend says that once every 50 years, a ghost ship rises to the surface, carrying those doomed to wander the river until someone remembers their names. The brave who call out to them are said to be dragged beneath, never seen again. Near Treme, there's a crumbling theater called Le Chant du Mort, the Song of the Dead. It was once a grand music hall where performers played to sold-out crowds. But during a hurricane in 1915, the roof collapsed, trapping hundreds inside. Now, people who pass by at night swear they hear piano notes drifting from within, laughter echoing faintly, applause rising with the wind. Once a year, on the night of the storm's anniversary, shadows fill the broken seats. A spotlight flickers on, and a figure bows to an audience that no longer exists. The legend of the Cypress Child chills even the oldest swamp dwellers. Hunters claim to have seen a small figure darting between the trees, glowing faintly blue. It looks like a child, barefoot and silent, with eyes like fireflies. They say it was once a baby abandoned in the swamp, raised by spirits of the dead. Those who follow it vanish into the marsh, found days later, their eyes clouded, their mouths full of swamp water. Only one man ever returned, muttering the same phrase over and over, "It wanted to go home." There's a story of a hidden courtyard behind a ruined convent where the air always smells of lilies. It's said that nuns buried something unholy there, a book that could summon lost souls. On moonlit nights, the courtyard glows faintly, and whispers rise from the ground. Teenagers dare each other to spend the night there, but none last until dawn. Those who try say the statues turn their heads when no one's looking, and a woman's voice sings softly in Latin, promising salvation that feels like surrender. The city has sealed the gates, but the song still seeps through the cracks. And finally, they speak of the one who ties all the stories together, the Watcher of the Crossroads. He appears at the intersection of Esplanade and St. Claude, tall, faceless, and wrapped in shadow. Some say he's the guardian of the city's spirits, others claim he's their collector. When you see him, you're said to have been chosen, to remember what others forget. Because in New Orleans, every ghost needs a storyteller, and every legend demands a witness. Those who look away might find themselves written into the next tale, their names whispered through the mist forevermore. 30 Most Trending.